Somebody wrote in chat, Aaron Alfecci, I guess. They wrote in, for someone who's new here, can you summarize what anarcho-capitalism is and how does it conflict with Yaron's views? I'm gonna go help out our next interviewee, as it were, or AMAer. So I'll leave you to it.
Kaysen, thank you for your work. I appreciate what you do to help out here.
Of course, my lord.
So they wanted... just to define, they wanted me to define anarcho-capitalism, or they wanted me to define...
Yeah, what is anarcho-capitalism and how does it conflict with Yaron? I can't never say it right. His views.
Okay, so anarcho-capitalism, I think, would be defined as... It's also called voluntarism, which means that all relationships should be voluntary. It's a perfect lack of coercion, a perfect lack of force. Another way of saying this is like the golden rule. Another way of saying that is to say, like, the initiation of force is always wrong. That's probably the clearest way of saying it. That don't start fights, don't attack people, don't take their stuff. And you just take that very simple, like, kindergarten principle and you universalize it to life in general, and you get anarcho-capitalism. Anarcho meaning no rulers, because rulers are definitionally people that use force to control other people. And the capitalism part just kind of really distinguishes it from maybe what would be called traditional anarchists, which would be the black flag, black and red Molotov cocktail throwing children that we see in the news so often recently. So anarcho-cap, they have a bad definition of capitalism, but they stand against capitalism. So to call yourself an anarcho-capitalism, just primarily, in my opinion, just to distinguish yourself from those people. What most people consider anarchists, right? Most people think it's Molotov cocktails and riots in the street, which is absolutely anathema to anarcho-capitalism. Capitalism implying property ownership. So if you respect the property rights of the people around you, the last thing you're going to be doing is, setting cars on fire in the streets, right? Because that's somebody's property and you don't have the right to mess with it. So voluntarism is just another word for anarcho-capitalism. It just means that all relationships should be voluntary. I don't coerce, I don't control, I don't initiate force against other people. Yaron Brook is the director, chairman of the board. I forgot his exact title of the Ayn Rand Institute.
Chairman of the board.
Mm-hmm. Ayn Rand is the founder, thinker, brain behind the school of thought known as Objectivism, which establishes sort of selfishness and that's a bad way to headline it, but it's basically like placing one's own life as the moral good. So things that contribute to living and well-being and happiness are the moral good, which is in stark contrast to like the traditional societal ideas that, that's selfish and selfishness is bad. You should be altruistic. You should put other people before yourself. And an objectivist would be able to very clearly make the case that putting people before yourself is the religion of death. And they're right in most of their thinking in those areas. Ayn Rand, as you may or may not know, wrote Atlas Shrugged, the second most influential book in the history of the world, aside from the Bible. A book that was hugely influential in my life. So much so that my children, my recent children's names are Atlas and Dagny, which Atlas is the title of the book, and Dagny is one of the main characters in the book. So when I criticize, like I said, when I criticize Yaron, I'm giving him my time and attention because of how much I respect him and his ideas and Ayn Rand and the Ayn Rand Institute. It's out of love that I criticize, not hate or butthurt. So what's the difference between the anarcho-capitalist view and Yaron's objectivist view? This is, well, I don't want to speak for Yaron because I haven't got him in a debate scenario yet to really spell out the core conflict between my position and that of all of the voluntarists that I know and his position. Like, an objectivist would tell you, to the degree you have coercion is the degree you have immorality. To the degree you have coercion is the degree to which you don't have capitalism.
Can I interject for a second there, though?
Who's this?
Oh, this just changed my mind. I put him in the channel a little bit ago, and he's been kind of listening in on you.
Yeah, sure. What's up?
Speak. Change my mind. Speak.
If when he speaks about coercion and involuntary society, how can a society exist if everybody has what is moral and is immoral?
I missed that. What'd you say? It kind of broke up in the middle there.
Oh, if we have a society that we have no coercion, how can a society with individual different ideas of what is immoral and moral, how can that coexist?
To keep myself from losing the train of thought to try and answer the other question, let me just finish that little blip and then I'll try and circle back. So I think the difference in Yaron's position is it seems like there's a complete misunderstanding of the position of voluntarism, of the position of anarcho-capitalism, at least the consistent one. Now, there are bad anarcho-capitalists just as there are bad libertarians. God knows there are bad libertarians. Woo! Just as there are bad objectivists. There are bad statists. There are bad Christians. There are bad everything. Though, there are bad people. There's something I don't understand why he has this bad, probably because he's debated people that call themselves libertarians, like the guy that I just played in that video. That's why, because he's debated people that are totally wrong on their justifications and their philosophy and their principles for libertarianism and voluntarism, anarcho-capitalism. That's why. So somebody along the way told him some really, crazy stuff that it's just all morally relativistic. And an objectivist has an opinion that morality is objective, and they define it objectively based on what serves life. That which serves life is the good. That which destroys life is the evil. Didn't
you just yourself had an objective opinion about morality when speaking about the so-called alleged pedophile?
Well, first of all, I don't call myself an objectivist, but I do think that there is a better way to objectively define morality. So I'm just trying to finish the distinction between the two.
You defined it by saying that people that are willingly to have sex with 5-year-olds are immoral.
Yes. That is what I said. Do you disagree?
I agree with you 100%. I just want you to justify it.
Why do you agree with me?
Because children can be physically and mentally harmed through that behavior.
And why does that make it immoral?
Because harming another person physically is immoral, or physically and mentally is immoral.
Why?
Because you have to have an objective, and that would be the objective. You have to come to a conclusion at one point. It's like asking, what is a meter? A meter is something that is defined.
Yeah, so you've just decided it's immoral then.
Correct.
So that's not an objective morality if it's just you deciding.
By subjectively, what is your definition of objectivism?
I'm just pushing back a little bit because this is the stuff
we're
talking about.
I have no problem with that. What is your definition of objectivism?
So let me rant a little bit and I'll try and define it. So throughout human history, humans have taken terms like good and evil and they've tied them to authority figures. like God, government, Congress, Constitution, kings, queens, republics, representatives, whatever. And, the things that God say are evil because God says so. It's an appeal to authority. The things that violate the Constitution are immoral. So saith the Constitution. It's another appeal to authority. And only recently, since the time of like Ayn Rand and voluntarism and the non-aggression principle, have I think people tried to lock down conceptions of morality that can be objective, can be universalizable, can be not based on an appeal to authority, not based on opinion of the church or the clergy or the Pope. And it's just it's a discovery process. And the objectivists would say that if you put, what serves life in as the equation for an objective morality, that defines what is good and what destroys life is evil. I would utterly disagree that is any less subjective than well, maybe not any less, but for the most part, it's still very subjective, because what you think serves life might be different from what I think serves life. And what if I want to commit suicide? Well, I am choosing to use my property to destroy life. So it's evil to use my property how I want? Well, now somebody can attack me for using my property how I want. I'm attacking the objectivist's view of morality before I define mine.
Well, yeah, because objectivism is exclusive of the mind. So if you can take it externally from the mental concept of humanity, that is how you objectify something. So how do you objectify morality?
When I say objective morality, I don't mean objective in that anvils fall out of the sky when you punch somebody. Like, it's not woven into the fabric of reality that something is evil or good. Like, there are no built-in judgments in existence. Like I said, anvils don't fall out of the sky when you kill somebody. It's not objective in that way. When I say objective, I mean it. I kind of define it as not subjective, meaning it's not based on anything that is temporal or opinion-based or feelings-based or something that can change from one place to another, time to another. I'm kind of saying the same thing in different ways. Like something is, excuse me. If something is objective, it means that with the same inputs, you'll always get the same output. Meaning, if I have the same set of circumstances, that even if somebody feels differently, it doesn't change the good or evilness of the action that we're observing or evaluating. Subjective things like feelings and opinions and like what time did it occur 1,000 years ago? Did it occur 100 years from now? If that matters for morality, then you've lost objectivity.
Okay,
location.
Is part
so,
of...
like, if something happens in the middle of the ocean versus something happens, in my front yard, does the morality change? Property systems excluded, right? If it happens in outer space versus in the middle of the ocean, does that change the good or evilness? If it does, then you're not dealing with an objective morality.
Well, objective things could also be subjective to a parameter. That's not a problem.
I think the degree to which you eliminate subjectivity is the degree to which you have objectivity.
And so, killing is bad. Killing is bad, but if you're killing to save yourself, then it's probably good, right? Morality, but it's not good depending on who you're killing, correct?
So that goes to what are rights and who gets them, which is a different, a long discussion. We can get into that. What was this? What you wanted to talk about? Are we on point for you? We can talk about whatever you want
to talk. Like I told your screener there. I'm happy because you went from one thing about gun rights, and then you went to socialism, then you went to pedophilia. So I just wanted first to be able to define objectivism before, and then I could go whatever you wish to talk about.
I was just I was trying to define the difference between what I would consider objective morality versus an objectivist, and I would by doing that I was pointing out the subjectivity in the objectivist morality versus which is the best definition I have found for what is evil is something that violates the non-aggression principle, something that violates consent or property. All rights are property rights is a great phrase. So something that violates consent or property is evil. And
we go to the situation. I know Stefan Malny always pushes that, but if it would it be moral to have killed Hitler if you had the chance, although it would have been murder in 1932.
So I have like a time machine?
No, I mean, if say right now there's a person. No, but if somebody saw what Hitler was doing and he saw what was going to happen and it was have assassinated Hitler, would that have been a good or moral thing to do? Although murder is wrong.
Yeah. So if you're, this goes to what are rights and who gets them. I will tell you that the best definition I've found and created or worked out or whatever so far is that rights are mutual reciprocal understandings between sentient beings that should be afforded to all those who are or will become sentient. And sentience, as defined as the capacity to think in terms of concepts. This is a brief, blow by of my conception of rights, but it's defined as people as an entity that can conceptualize and an entity that has the ability to imagine preferred future states, evaluate the different ones, choose a plan of action to achieve, the future states, defer gratification to achieve those future states. So if you have those capacities, I'd call you sentient. And as long as you're reciprocating, the mutual understanding that is rights with other sentient beings around you, then that is what rights are. So that is to answer that. I'm trying to answer your question. So
can you apply that situation then and say there's a leader right now that in all rationality or logic will lead to the destruction of a nation or people? Would it be acceptable to assassinate that person?
Let me stick on the Hitler thing for a second because I was almost done with that, and I'm going to tie it together, and I think you'll extrapolate your answer. So if someone is threatening someone else, being, let's say, Hitler, being a robber in a dark alley, whatever, that person is ceasing to reciprocate the mutual understanding that is rights. So by punching you, they are signaling to you, they are communicating to you that they don't respect your rights, that they do not reciprocate the mutual understanding that is rights. And so you no longer have any kind of expectation on you that you need to respect them so you can punch them back. That's like a philosophically accurate way of describing self-defense. If somebody attacks you, they lose the benefit, the protection, the conceptual protection of rights. They lose the right to not be punched back because they punched you.
But what happens if
super chat? Hang on. We got a super chat here. Thank you for dedicating your time and thoughts. Says, I think that's our guy from Greece, GD. Dude, thank you, sir. I appreciate the super chat. I look forward to many more awesome conversations with you. Thank you. So anyway, that's kind of how rights work. It's just, look, we both agree to respect each other. Until one of us doesn't, we're going to continue doing that. And when one of us stops reciprocating, then it's like, well, all bets are off in that area because you've said that, you're cool with punching me. So you have lost any kind of standing to say that I don't get to punch you back. So the moment Hitler gassed a room full of humans is the moment he lost the right to expect anyone not to pretty much do anything they wanted back to him. Like he gave up his rights by signaling.
What happens prior to it? What happens if he has not caused any actions to be able to reciprocate that?
If he hasn't aggressed on anyone or threatened anyone.
Yes, he only expressed views that could have led to such actions.
I guess you'll have to give me an example.
Well, like his speeches in 1932, before he gained power or anything like that, he blatantly disrespected other people and I guess offended people or that's what they call hate speech today. So would you be willing to stop him prior to his acting on his verbal uh, directions, or would you just let it go because it's just his opinion and freedom of speech?
I mean, I guess I'm going to have to ask you for an example because I'm not up on Hitler's speeches.
Okay, so if somebody says that people who have purple hair are a threat to society and keep our economics down, or have destroyed the family or whatever, digressed against the social fabric that we exist today, is it accept to digress on them and have initiation of force on them?
I mean, I wouldn't call that a threat. Like,
okay, but I mean, if somebody else does.
Like a threat is like you point a gun at me, or you raise your fist and you say, screw you, you whatever, and you get ready to swing at me. Well, you're threatening me.
Okay, so the first initial has to be a proactive behavior that initiates force, then, for you to be able to defend yourself.
I think you have to communicate pretty clearly. Well,
somebody has to actually do something to you for you to defend yourself, right?
I think you have to communicate a pretty clear threat, like a clear and present threat, or what do they call it? What's the word? It's they have to have means and intent and capability for it. It's the same like if you call the cops right now and you said that somebody that cussed you out at the grocery store. Viable, is that the word? Maybe viable, whatever. It's got to be an action.
Viable threat.
I forgot the word, but yeah, a viable threat is a viable threat.
Mop.
Yeah. What?
Yeah, Supreme Court has determined in the last proceedings that a threat has to be viable and it has to be direct, but not implicit.
What?
How are you and your family? Hope
Hang
well.
on.
Best
I'm sorry.
wishes.
I'm sorry, we just got a super chat that's blowing my mind.
$100.
$100? Are you crazy? What? Kason, help me. I don't know what to say. What?
Oh, looks like our hourly rate for philosophy just went up to 0.05 cents per hour over the duration of having the channel open. Now we're really rolling in the dough.
Oh my god. Dude. Well, thank
EG
you.
did ask, how are you and your family? Hope well. So probably ought to answer, EG.
Need to, how are you and your family? Hope well. Best wishes, peaceful, easy feeling. So, wow. I am humbled by your donation, sir. Thank you. My family is pretty cool right now. So, my daughter, just to give you a quick update, because you've certainly paid for it. I'm sorry to put our conversation on pause for a second. Change my name. My daughter has been asking for the past year to get to go to the meetup group. We have a meetup that meets every Thursday. It's a bunch of volunteerists. We have a great time. And she used to come occasionally with my wife, but since she's been immunocompromised, she hasn't been able to be around anybody, any large groups of people, go out in public really at all. So for the past year, every single week when I'm getting ready to go to the meetup, she asks me to, hey, Dad, can I go with you? Can I go with you this time? And to tell her no for like 52 weeks, 4-year-old, that's an eternity. And it was really starting to affect her and wear on her. And so now that we're getting close to the end of the main harshest part of the chemo treatment, for the first time last Thursday, I was getting ready to go. And I said, hey, I got a surprise for you. You get to go to the meetup this week. And I'm tearing up, and she's like so happy she doesn't even know what to do with herself. Oh my God. So she got to go to the meetup and she got to hang out with us, and life is starting to begin the process of heading back towards normalcy. And my family is beginning sort of the healing process, that we still have a lot to go. We still have a lot to do. We still have a lot of crap. She still has an IV that she has to run every night and all this stuff, but we're getting there is what I'm saying. And so life in my house the past week or two it's like we can start to breathe again. So that's the update on the family. Lord knows you paid for the update on the family. Thank you very much for your donation. I very much appreciate it. Whoever the hell you are. I still don't know who you are. Peaceful, easy feeling. So, okay, back to where we were. Change my name. Where were we? Sorry. My mind was blown there. What's up?
Oh, no, you keep on going.
I forgot what we were talking about even.
we were talking about what makes a viable threat or a credible threat.
Yeah. So I'll let you guys in. Kind of behind the scenes Patrick brain lately. So for the past 6 months, and let me just kind of talk for a while, if you don't mind. Change. This is going to be a little bit because I want to tell people and maybe ask for help.
Grab your popcorn. This will be a minute.
For any philosophers that are out there that want to contribute to this problem that I've run into. So this happens from time to time. Is like I'm philosophizing. I'm thinking. Usually my brain just kind of, we surf along, and then I ask a question and I work on answering that question. And most questions I work out answers to pretty quickly, but all of a sudden, I'll trip over one and I'll be like, whoa, what happened? We just passed something that I should have been able to answer really easily, but I couldn't. And then the longer I'm stuck on that, the more worried I get. And I think I may have found a pretty big problem here. So I'll just put this out there. And I'm not, guys, I have never once in my life said that I have all the answers. I am on a journey. I feel like I'm a journeyman philosopher. I'm not some expert that knows all. So I'm just going to be honest and tell you a problem that I see with most people's understanding of the non-aggression principle. And I'm going to hope that most people have, or that somebody out there has thought of this and has an answer. GD, I think maybe you might have some resources in some of the stuff that you emailed me recently that might help with this. But here's where I'm at. So when we talk about the non-aggression principle, thou shalt not initiate the use of force against a peaceful person, against somebody else. You don't initiate force. And then, a statist typical first line of defense or a first line of pushing back on that is always like, what are you, some kind of, what's the word? God, my brain sucks lately. What are you, some pacifist? Thank you, Kason. What are you, some kind of pacifist? And the voluntarists will then respond by saying, no, you can defend yourself. If somebody threatens you, you can respond with defensive force. It's like, okay, can we define threat in an objective way? Like, this seems like an easy question. This is what I blew past by, and I was like, wait, I didn't actually answer that. Hold on. And and it came up before that, several months prior, or a month prior, and I actually called all my friends into like the local voluntarists, and we got them all in a Discord chat, and we talked through the problem. And let me lay this one out for you. This gets to the same problem, but from a totally different angle. I was working out the answer to a different question, which is, can you collectivize? To what degree can you collectivize guilt or culpability for crimes? And so what I was thinking of was like, just to give you an example. So if a guy's walking up your street with, a gun on his hip, and obviously, like, I don't think most people would perceive that as a threat, at least here in Texas, maybe in some parts of the country. But just, walking with a weapon is not inherently a threat. What if they're walking up the street wearing a police uniform? Is that a threat? Because a lot of cops are a threat. Like, they watch you drive everywhere you go. They light you up and threaten you with force if you don't pull over. And, they extort money from you for victimless non-crimes, just for behavior that politicians scribble on paper is bad. That's a threat. They threaten you as a matter of course. So if you see a person wearing cop garb in a cop car, you can assume that they're also going to be watching you to look for these non-crimes to initiate force on you and threaten you over politician scribbles. Well, what if it's like the uniform of a foreign army, and now like a soldier is marching up your street from an invading country even, let's say. Is that person wearing that uniform signaling that they're a part of that collective called foreign army or called police department? Does that make that individual person collectively culpable for the crimes of the group, of other members of the group? That's really what it is. Trying to completely avoid collective language, right? So you have like a gang. Let's talk about gang warfare, right? You got like the Crips and the Bloods. They murder people as a matter of course over victimless crimes because they want to control, drug property, or they want to control blocks or city streets, or certain areas, geographical areas. So members of these gangs, as a matter of course, initiate violence. They're a threat. So because most of the members of this gang are a threat, if you see somebody wearing the symbology of signaling that they're a member of this group of people, can you collectivize the threat, or that's where it came to. Can you collectivize the culpability for the other members' crimes onto those people? Meaning, if you see a member of the Crips, walking towards you, are they threatening you? Are they threatening you is not even where I was going. It's like, can you use defensive force against an individual based on their membership in a group of people that, as a matter of course, does evil things all the time? And that got the group of us talking about, well, what constitutes a threat? Because you got to define a threat to tell if you can collectivize. So if you can collectivize culpability for crimes, can you collectivize threats? This is like super nerdy stuff. I'm surprised anybody is still watching. So I'm glad if you are. So can you collectivize culpability? If so, I think you also can collectivize like the threat that comes from the culpability, or the lack of rights reciprocation that comes from culpability for crimes. Now, I think there's a distinction that has to be made between collectives or groups that you voluntarily join versus groups that you don't, right? So like if you're born white and some white people do bad things, obviously you can't collectivize culpability because it's like an unchosen attribute. Like I didn't choose to be part of this concept collective called white people, right? But if I voluntarily choose to join a military, can my voluntary membership in that collective confer culpability for the crimes of that collective? So if the collective begins frequently going around the world murdering people, can I be attacked because I'm a member of that collective voluntarily? These are the kind of questions I was wrestling with, which led me to think about and consider trying to objectively define what a threat is. And so far I have failed to objectively define threat. Objectively meaning a definition that applies in all times and all places, not based on opinion, not based on interpretation, not based on culture, not based on species. Can we objectively define threat? And I've got a few ideas that I'm working on, but I don't have a conclusion yet. But it bothers me because if you can't objectively define threat, then it makes the non-aggression principle to be objective. You have to kind of exclude that part of it, which I don't like at all. It doesn't sit well with me. This is not a conclusion I'm happy about. Let me make that clear. That's why I'm working on defeating it, but this is where I'm currently stuck. Kaysen, did you want to say something? You appeared.
Yeah, it turns the non-aggression principle into the non-actively trying to murder you principle, which is a challenge.
Right, so that would mean that initiation of force means literal initiation of force, not threaten or initiate force, right? So like you can use defensive force against somebody who's already used force. And that's fucking stupid.
And whenever we've talked about it at the meetup, whenever we've talked about it at the meetup, you've come up with a kind of, phraseology or some such of calling it the island in the city, the island being no social norms built on top, like arguments from first principles, irrefutable, cannot break them unless you find a flaw within the logic. But then you get into some kind of norm, whether that be something explicit like a contract, and you can manage behavior in that way, or something where like doorbells in general in this area don't mean please blow me up. They generally mean hi, I'm here, and it can be enforced via like ostracism and stuff. And I think I'm curious to find out if the Borg brain of the internet can put itself to work. Hello, Verbal Armament and Ryan McDonald. I'm curious to know if the Borg brain of the internet can come up with a way to bridge the gap to create an argument from first principles to truly make it the non-aggression principle from first principles, not from building on top of that.
And I think what brought this up was the conversation with Change My Name, who it looks like disappeared from the voice chat. So I'm sorry if I talked.
He fell asleep. He's
I put you to
didn't
sleep,
get
I
a
guess, man. I'm
popcorn.
sorry. I don't feel like I really gave you your due there. So feel free to join back in if you want to continue. But I think what brought that up was trying to define objectively. So like, yeah, and like I said, like if something has any component of it that doesn't function the same way in all times and all places, then I don't call it objective. So like if what that means is like to objectively define threat, like an alien will have to like, you know, come down that has never, you know, met a human before in their life, knows nothing of human culture or human interaction, and they would have to, you know, observe a behavior and understand that it was a threat using an objective definition of threat. They would be able to tell if something's a threat, like absent social context, absent societal context. Like we need to come up with a universalizable objective definition of threat, because I don't see that coming from anybody right now.
You know, what's interesting, I just thought of a movie. I don't remember what movie or TV show this is. Maybe you'll know. Maybe it was Rick and Morty. But like whenever people wanted to say hello or good morning, they used violence to say that because their species was immune to physical pain. And it's just like even like somebody puncturing, you know, assuming some crazy alien, you know, weird life form that's just how they speak. You're like, universal challenges.
Because the problem
man.
is, if a threat is always up for your interpretation, like, you know, because you can tell when you're being threatened. Like, let's keep it real. Let's keep it in the real world here. Like, you can tell when you're being threatened, and you can tell when you're not. And like Kaysen can tell the difference between like me looking at him very seriously and saying, I'm going to kill you, MFer. And he's going to know that's a joke because we're friends, and he knows all the context of our relationship, all the context of my behavioral cues and my expressions, and he will know whether that's a threat or not. No one outside of his head will know. And there's not really a definition that can function outside of the recipient of the threat. Like, that's the thing. It can't be only knowable to the recipient of the threat. That doesn't work.
So I just read in the chat that Verbal Armament was saying, do or don't do blank or I will harm you. And then he points at it and says threat. But I'm trying to come up with an edge case where that's not the case. Well, it could be sarcasm. That's not objectively a threat.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's unsolvable. I'm just saying I'm currently stuck on it. And I'm admitting fallibility to everyone watching because I think that's important. I'm not sitting here saying I got all the answers. In fact, I'm stuck on free will, and we're not going to talk about that either. But there's a free will discussion that we can have, at another time that I think will be pretty useful and informative.